Hello? Okay. Hey, Krishna, how's it going? All right. All right. Are we ready to get started? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, great. Great. All right. So we're going to work on something interesting today. We're going to build a SaaS app in less than an hour. Hopefully, see if it works. It's going to be an interesting website. We're going to put it together. It's going to be pretty useful. And here is the parameters. So if you take a look at the document, basically most projects start with something like this, right? What's the idea? What does the project have to have? What does the project have nice to have? And then we'll try to figure out what the different pieces that go into it are, right? And we're going to work on building the different elements that go into it with a very small amount of code. Our project is to build this functional website, but very, very small. So basically, we need to create a simple, clean, and straightforward website that generates a QR code from a link. So it's going to be like a QR generator. It has to generate a QR code. That's the whole point of the site. So if you think about it, on the main page of the site, we're going to have, let's see. So on the main page of the site, let's see. So we're going to have one box with the QR code. The other box is going to be our logo, right? And then we're going to have a text entry box with the URL, something like that. Right? Now, we have to generate a QR code, and it would be nice if we could log the data that people put into JSON. It's probably important for legal reasons in case JP starts making, I don't know what kind of QR codes and pasting them all over, stealing Bitcoin wallets or whatever. And then it would also be nice to put it in Google Analytics so we can get a lot of like detailed information on how we could, put this together. And since we have exactly 50 minutes to build this, we have to think about step number one is what pieces go into the site, right? So there's a few elements that we have to think about. The first one is, how do we take a URL and turn it into a QR code? Any ideas? How do we take a QR code and turn it into a link and turn it into a QR code? Now, fortunately, there's a library that does that. And that is here. And it's really, really easy to use. Right, so you could take a look at it on PyPy. And using the code that's on here, we could build our MVP in literally 3 lines of code. Let's take a look at it. So this is our MVP. We're going to do this in Python, which is not what we have to do, but it's a good place to start. And we have image equals qrcode.make, youtube.com. Save this picture YouTube QR. I press run. It will install QR code and generates this image. And if you take your camera and you point it at the screen, this QR code will launch YouTube. Right? Let's give it a try with another link. So I'm going to go to my LinkedIn and I'm going to look up the profile of JP. That's him. Very fancy. I'll grab that link and I'm going to drop it in here. And I'll change this to JP underscore QR. I'm going to press run and I get this picture, JP QR. And I assume if you put your phone on there, you'll end up at JP's LinkedIn profile. You should probably add him. He's a good person to know. Make sense? And the whole process, let me just check that for a second. Hold on. I'm just going to turn on my camera on my phone, point it at the screen. LinkedIn pops up. And there you go. I'm on JP's profile. That was pretty cool. Okay. So now I got this JP bot working. That's not super useful because we want to ask users to put in their own URL, right? But the good thing is we have really minimal code. And we only have 3 lines of code to make this work. So that part is okay. All right. Now, the next part that we want to do is have the user put in a URL, right? Any ideas how we can do that?
You take the photo and upload it.
Well, we could do something like URL equals input, please put in URL, right? And then we get rid of all of this and we just put in URL. And then we'll save this as QR code. So I'm going to press run. It says, please put in URL. Should probably add a space here. Please put in URL. And I could type in http :/www.aol.com. And it will create a QR code that goes to AOL.com, right? So I could let people type in the terminal. It has to be properly formatted. We could build some code to check that. But basically, it takes your web address and it creates a QR code out of it. Make sense? Any questions, comments, thoughts? All right. So stage one, pretty simple. We set up the code in 3 lines to make the QR code, right? So we're generating QR code using the QR code package. We're asking the users to put in a URL, and then we send it to QR code maker, and then we save the image as whatever, and it creates it. Okay, so we need some graphics. Since this is a very minimal, clean, straightforward site, I went to Canva and I just generated this little thing. It says QR Code Maker Friday Project. I'm going to press download, and I'm going to download this image. Right, so I have it on my computer. I'll just open it up in Finder. And if we take a look at it, so step number 1 is we made the QR code work in Python. Sorry, am I having some trouble with the Zoom for some reason? Hold on. Okay, so let's take a look at that. We generated this graphic, QR code maker, right? So we got the program to work. It's 3 lines of code. We got the graphic done. It looks amazing. Now we have to just put all the pieces together and make it work. So the first thing that we're going to do is we'll set up a website, right? Regular website. And to do that, we're going to go back to Replit. And I'll click over here. I'll set up an HTML website. Now, there's a couple things that I want to do, so we'll just do them like step by step to figure it out. Here's our website. It says Hello World. So if I run it, it says Hello World on the top. In the body, we're going to put in a tag called center. Center is going to center everything. Right, so we have center, and we'll write this will be centered. I'm going to press run. So it says the text will be centered. That's where everything gets centered. If you have any questions about anything, let me know if I'm going too fast or whatever. Now, we made our graphics. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to drag it into this Replit QR code maker. This is the image that we made. And we'll display it in the center, right? So we're going to write image source, src, equals, and we'll put in qr.png just to make it short. And then this guy will rename as qr.png. That's it. Let's press run. So if we open this in a new window, here is the website. You can check it out. You'll notice that it's gigantic. It's really huge. This image was like 1200 pixels, too big. So we'll make it a little bit smaller and we'll control that using the width. So we'll go into here and we'll say width equals, let's do 500. So now when we run it, I'll just refresh it. It says QR code maker. It's a lot smaller. And again, if you look at the picture in our document, we want to have the QR code maker here on one side, the bar on the bottom, and then the QR code show up here, right, on the left-hand side. So far, so good? Yeah. All right. So let's work on a couple other pieces. We're gonna go here. So we have our piece. This needs to be two pieces though. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a table, right? And we're first gonna say table row. So that's our first row. And it's probably easier if I draw this at the same time. So we're creating a table, right? And then we create a table row. So that's a row that goes all the way across. And then this row is going to have two table datas or cells inside of it, right? So from the outside, it goes table, table row, table data, table data. Make sense? So we're going to say table row, that's our first row. And then we're going to write table data. And this is going to be blank. I'm just going to put that in here for now. Table data. Then we're going to go our second table data. And our second table data is going to have this image inside of it, slash table data. And then we'll close the table row, and then we'll close the table. Let's give it a run. So now we have two boxes. Let's go back to our website and look at it in big. So we have two boxes, blank. I just put the blank as a space holder. This is where the QR code is going to show up, and QR code maker is where the logo is going to go. Just to show you what it looks like maybe a little better, we'll grab this image and we'll put that in there for now. Remember that the image is going to be replaced with another image of the QR code. So basically this is what it will look like. This one will be a QR code. This one will be that box. Make sense? Okay. So, any questions? Comments? Thoughts? We're good? Okay. After the table, but still centered, we're going to add a form, right? And the form is where we're going to form method equals, we'll use post, right? And then we're going to do input style. We'll do height is 200.
You could be given a data
pixels.
frame that has missing values, so it's important to know how to handle them.
Do
most data is not perfect. There's always a possibility.
Is 14 point semicolon. Okay.
That there are some pieces missing from your data set.
We do need to add one more piece.
For example, maybe on the day that Bella and Cooper's owner weighed them, the scale was broken.
Get this big box, that is not what we wanted. So the table's over. The height is 200. Let's make the height 100. Okay. Let's try that again. Width is 200 pixels. Okay, it's getting the right size. Let's try 500 by 75. That might be better. It is not better. So that gave us, oh, I wrote 750. My bad. Okay, that looks better. So width, we're going to do 500. All right. So we have a text box. and we can type something in here, right? Okay. There's a couple more things that we need to put in there. Let me grab it. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to add a style tag to the top. I got this from W3, and this is just some HTML for the button. So I'll put that inside the header, and I'll grab everything and press tab. Okay, so I put that in. And this sets the border radius for different kinds of buttons. We're going to use button 3. Right, so we'll go down here, and we'll say button class equals button, and we're going to pick button 3 style, and then we'll say submit, and we will close the button. Okay, let's take a look at it. Should get a green button that says submit next to it. And then if we go up to the top and we look, it says padding is 20 pixels, the font size is 16, the margin is this, and if we look carefully, this is giving us a border radius of how big it's supposed to be. All right, so this button 3, we could make it a little bit bigger. I'll try padding. Font size is 16 pixels. Our font size here is 14 pixels. So let's change it to 14, and we'll see if it matches up a little bit better. No, we should probably make it go the other way. 18. It's getting better. I'll try 22. Maybe a little more. And of course, we could change pretty much everything. The colors, the font, the shape. I'm just trying to get it to be like approximately similar size. Maybe we'll shrink this to 65. We could play around with it a little more, but it's getting pretty close. Maybe that should be like 62. Okay, it looks pretty good. So we have this button. It has little rounded edges. It comes from this amount here, border radius. Right now, we're using button 3, I think. Yeah, so that's set to 8 pixels. If we made it like 50%, it would be a circle. If we made it 12 pixels, it would be even more rounded. So if we make it 10 pixels, and take a look at this button, I'm going to reload it, and it's going to curve the edges even more, right? Until it becomes a circle. Okay, so web page looks good. We have our QR code on the left-hand side. We have our logo on the right-hand side, and we have our text entry button that submits. Looks good so far? Okay, let's just make sure that we got everything. Okay, so here we have button. Let's change it to input type equals submit. I think we should still be okay. Yeah. No. We don't need this button part at the end. Perfect. And the button works. Right now, if you go to the web page, let's reload it. Here's the link. You can give it a click. You could type something in. and submit it. It doesn't go anywhere, but it sends it in, right? Now we're going to have post action equals / Okay, we're not sending it anywhere yet. And input is going to be, so we have style, and we're going to write here ID equals URL, entry URL, and name equals entry URL. We're going to need those later to identify what was typed in, because we're going to call it by this name, the variable, as opposed to what was actually typed in, because it's going to be different for everybody. Okay, so we'll reload it. Doesn't make any difference here. We'll press submit, and we're okay. By the way, if you want to see what's going on with the table, you could say table border equals, we could do 2. And then this will show us a 2-pixel border around the table. It's good to do this sometimes just to visualize where each piece goes in. And you'll notice that QR code maker itself is a little bit offset. Like it's not exactly in the center itself. It leans towards the left, which is going to be useful for us because it's going to make the site come together a little better. This right side is going to have a QR code. But even though it looks off center right now, the 2 squares are the same size and they're both in their own boxes, right? It just means that the QR code will show up a little bit closer to the center line. So turning on the borders can sometimes be a really good idea. So you're able to see like, where do things show up? So far, just to recap, we did a little bit of HTML, we did a little bit of CSS, and we did a little bit of Python, right? We used our QR code maker and we generated a JP LinkedIn profile QR code. So far, so good. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Questions, comments, thoughts? Hey, Krishna, what's going on?
Yes, for that box, you have put that entry URL. Actually, what does that do, actually, that entry URL into that?
Oh, so when you put in the ID and the name, it just gives us variables to use in the code. So we could find that whatever you type in, but using the variable name. But it doesn't actually do anything.
Okay. So it doesn't check that whether any URL has been posted there or no, not that.
There's no logic right now. Right now we have a form that doesn't go anywhere. So if I fill out the form and I press submit, just reloads the page.
Yeah. Okay.
Make sense?
Yes.
All right. Okay, let me just check one more thing. Submit. And we're going to add in here value equals submit. Let's make sure we're good. I think so. Looks good. Okay. Next step. So now we have all the individual pieces for the whole project worked out. We have the QR code logo. This is where the QR code is going to show up. We have our URL bar down at the bottom, and we have our Python code that's going to generate the QR code and plug it into the website. We'll do some coding afterwards to like make a few folders and store data and log it to JSON, and we could build a dashboard and plug in analytics, all the other things that were on our list that we want to do. But this is basically a good place to start, right? So I'm going to start, this is what we're going to end up with, no borders, but same kind of idea. So we did the HTML part, we did the Python part, and we are now going to plug it all together, right? I did some graphics. So next thing, we'll go back to Replit, and we're going to go to Python. And for the very, very beginning part of our program, I'm just going to let it load up. And we're going to start with an example, and we'll turn on Flask, right? Flask is going to let us build a web server, and the web server is going to do all the different pieces that we want for our data. So we have from Flask import Flask, and we're going to add render template because we want the template to show up when we run it. And we're also going to use request. Request, we're going to use, you've used it before with an API, but we're going to use it to read data from the form. So when you press submit on the form and it sends that data somewhere, it's going to send it to a page that we're going to interpret it, grab it, and make things work. Next, we're going to create a new page. We're going to call this qr.py. Okay, in this qr.py, this is a file that's sitting in the root folder. We're just going to grab this code, right? Now, we're going to say import QR code, but we're going to turn the rest of it into a function. So we're going to say define make QR, and we're going to pass in an image, right? And then we'll put all this over here. Okay. And then we'll leave this for now, but we're going to have to fix this to make it bring back an image to the right place, right? Yeah, we'll come back to this. Okay, step number 2 is we need 2 folders to make everything work. One folder is going to hold our static files like the image. So we're going to create a folder called static. And then we'll go back to the main level and we'll create another folder called templates. And these are the defaults. They have to be called this. And it has to be spelled right with the right formatting. Django and Flask are not very good at telling you what's wrong most of the time. So it's important to get those steps right. Otherwise, it can be kind of hard to debug. It's possible, but so now we have our 2 folders. In templates, I'm going to make a new folder called index.html, right? In static, we would put like our CSS, JavaScript, etc. We don't have any of that right now. The only thing that we need in this project right now is our QR code maker, and I'll rename it as QR. So that's our logo, right? So I got the index page. Let's go back to our website here, and we'll copy in all of our HTML and put it in here. Okay, so we run this right now. It's going to install Flask. It's going to turn on the server. And what happens when you go to the main point of Flask? It says hello world, right? I'll send you the link for this. You can give it a click, refresh it, and it basically just takes that string and it sends it out to you. So you give it a click at the bottom, it sends it out. By the way, you notice this problem at 404, it's missing a favicon. Before we continue, we'll make one of our favicons. We're going to go favicon generator. This is a completely one, favicon.io, and we're going to use an emoji. What's a good URL shortener emoji? I don't know. There's a lot of smiley faces here. Let's try internet, or how about net, or computer? No. Activities. There's a lot of different ones, but not the one I want to see. Okay, let's try people and body. They should have one with a computer. Stop me if you see it. Man technologist. Okay. That wasn't the one I was thinking of, but I guess it will have to do. Technologist. All right. So I'm going to press download. It's going to download that favicon in a bunch of different places. Let's go show in Finder. I'll open up that folder. Okay. So we got to install it. Okay, so it says, copy and paste the following tags and put them in the head of your HTML. So let's grab these guys. And we'll go to our header in HTML. So the header is up here. And we'll copy in all of these. Okay, now there's a few things that are not in this. So we don't have any CSS, so we can get rid of that line. I'll just delete it. And then down at the bottom, we don't have any JavaScript, so I'll get rid of that line. I could comment them out, but we don't need them. Okay, now this says look in. So we're going to say look in static images Apple Touch, right? We'll make it static FAV. Okay, so I'm going to make two folders now. One folder called FAV inside static, and we'll put this in there too. Okay, so then we're going to go into static. We'll make a new folder called FAV. And then inside the FAV folder, we're going to copy all the stuff I just downloaded. And that will have the picture of our technologist, but for Android, for Chrome, they're all just in different sizes. Right? This just tells you, depending on the device, if you're on a phone, if you're on a computer, which one to use, and they're all linked up now to our template. All right, so we press run, and nothing happens. And you're super impressed, I can tell. But by the way, if you run it now, oh, sorry. If you run it now, it's not going to come up with that error anymore, but I don't think it will have the favicon, and I'm almost positive it won't. It will not, actually. So it still has this little planet up here, because we have to connect them in order to make it work. Okay, so now that we have all of that working, we're going to say, what's our function called? Make QR. So we're going to say from qr.py, import make QR, right? So that package, that function, make QR, is now accessible to our main program. Okay, so now we're going to start out with our app route. We can call it Hello World, we can call it Introduction, doesn't make a difference. But instead of returning the string Hello World, we're going to set it to render a template. Render a template, and what do we want to see? Index.html. And now we're also going to say our methods for this page are either get or post. That just lets the page connect with the outside world. Give it a run, see what happens. So give it a click. We now have this image didn't work. We do have a submit button, that's okay. It says Krishna was here, we could send that in, okay. Now let's figure out why the images aren't working. So to find the image, if we go down here, it's just looking for qr.png. That's not where the file is anymore. It's now in a different folder, which is static/qr.png, right? We can get rid of this guy because we don't need it anymore, right? We'll just write QR code here. Okay, let's give it a reload, and we'll press run. You'll notice a couple things now. We have our QR code maker show up here. It says the QR code here. It's going to show up there. We have our box to submit it. And you'll notice that the technologist guy is now on our favicon up at the top, right? So everything's working. It's looking in the right folders. It's all sharing them all together. So far, so good? All right, here's the problem. I go, Krishna was here, or I put in a URL, for example. I press submit, and it doesn't go anywhere. So we got to work on that part next, right? By the way, if you see 304 come up, 304 means that JP just went onto the page and pressed refresh, but he already had that favicon downloaded on his computer. So instead of sending it to him again, it said, no, nothing changed. We're not going to send it to you again. So it doesn't mean anything went wrong. It just means he already had it. You don't send it again. That's what the cache on his computer in his browser is doing, right? So it saves bandwidth. But the 200 means I successfully sent the content. Like web content usually gets sent all the time. So if somebody just clicked refresh and they got the 32 by 32 version of the PNG, they also got the 16 by 16 version of the PNG. That got sent. That's why it said 200. But if that same person refreshes, they'll probably get the 304 code instead, like that, right? Because it didn't send it the second time. So qr.png, that person already had on their computer. Any questions, comments, thoughts? We're on the same page. All right, so let's go back to index. We have action. We're going to send this to a function called form. And method is going to be post. So we have action is form. Let me just move these around. Action is form. Method is post. Now we have our box, and then we say we only have one text box, URL entry, and then we press submit. Okay, so this means use the post method to send it back to the web page that's waiting for it. In this case, it will send it to a function called form, which we don't have yet. So I'm going to stop this and start it. And if I type in Krishna is here and I press submit, nothing happens. But if you look down here, it's going to tell you, hold on, let's try that again. No URL found, because it's trying to go to /form, which doesn't exist. So we have two options. Number one is we can create a real page called form, or number two is we can create a virtual endpoint that doesn't really exist, but connects to a place called form. And we'll do that second option. So we're going to go in here and we're going to write at app.route. And this time we'll say form. And we're going to copy the same business from up here. We're going to say form has access to two methods of connecting with the outside world, post and get. We'll make a new function. So for simplicity's sake, I'll call this form function. Okay. And now the form is going to listen to when you press submit on the page. So we're going to say if request dot method is the same as post, then we're going to make something called data equals request.form. So download the request.form in data. Okay, now we're going to say, what was our field called? Our field was called entry URL. Okay, so we're going to write URL equals data entry URL. Okay, so data entry URL. Yeah, I'm supposed to. I'm saying if request.method is the same as post. In other words, when the folder, when the form is talking to us, if it's using the post method, then check the form. Right? So we're saying if request.method is the same as == post. Okay. So now we're going to make a copy of the index page, and we'll call this, I don't know, QR page.html. Okay. I'll copy everything from the index page and I'll put it over here. at the very top, we should probably write QR generator. So the title changes. And we'll do that on index as well. Okay. Now we have QR generator. So, okay. Then if this works okay, right? Then we're going to say return render template. And this time, instead of sending you to index, we're going to send you to the QR page, qrpage.html. That's the second page. It looks the exact same though, right? The only difference is this time we're going to say URL equals URL. This means pass the URL to the other page. So let's do a little bit of cleanup here. We're going to go here and in the form where we have QR code here, we're just going to get rid of that for a second. We'll leave it blank for now. We could change it to a blank later, but we'll just change it to a blank for now. And then here, we'll use some Jinja, and we're going to write squiggly brackets, URL, that's the variable, and it will plug the variable into the right, using Jinja. Should work now, so let's give it a quick try. I'm going to press run. We'll reload it. I'll go back a page. Okay, so we have QR code maker. Oh, and something else important. Let's go to index.html and we'll change border to 0, and we'll do the same thing on the other page, border to 0. I'm going to press stop. We'll press run. We'll reload this. And now it says QR code maker. I'm just going to write Krishna was here. It doesn't matter. It's a string. I'm going to press submit, and it says Krishna was here. So it took it from the first page, it passed it to the second page. On this page, if I say Krishna was here, it just updates it. If I say Sydney was here, it says Sydney was here, right? And if I go to LinkedIn, let me hold on 1 second, and I find JP's profile. This is a very important part. And I copy JP's thing here, and I put it in like this. It just shows up on the side. We're on the same page? Any questions? So basically, we have 2 pages. Page number 1, which you get to when you go to the slash, brings up this page. This is our beginning page. You type in anything, Krishna, Sydney, URL for JP, you press submit, and it brings you here. The problem is that we don't want this link. We want a QR code, right? So we want a QR code to show up in this box, in this spot. So to do that, we're going to activate our function when we're in this stack. So instead of sending URL to here, we're going to instead activate this function, right? So we're going to say make QR, and we're going to send in URL, right? Now, if we just press run right now, what's it going to do? It's going to save something called qr.jpg. Let's just give it a try. So I'll press run. We'll go here. I'll reload the page. Actually, I'll go back 1 step here. I'm going to put in JP's profile. I'll press submit. Okay. So we'll take a second. Just thinking about it. It's probably working. It's thinking a lot. I'm not sure what that means. Let me try to reload it. Okay, so we got this one. I'm going to refresh. I'm not going to go to form. I'll just go here. Krishna was here. I'll press submit.
Now that you've learned a lot about how to work with Pandas
and oh, I see what's happening. Okay, so let's go. I'll comment this out for a second. I'm going to say return string. Okay, so we'll press run. I'll go back here. We'll go back to the main page. I'm going to type in JP's portfolio. I'll press submit. Thinks about it for a second. And it should generate the QR code, I think. Okay, now QR at the end is saving this image, right? Yeah. Oh, it says please paste in. Yeah, I see what happened. All right, so URL is going to be image. Now we're good. All right, I forgot that we changed that. Okay, so let's reload it. We'll go here, we'll press submit. It said string, it worked. We'll go back to the file, and now we have this thing called qr.jpg. That's JP's picture. Okay, so let's get rid of that for a second. And we're going to, we'll go to here. So we're going to say, just give me a second. Okay, so right now we're passing in the image. It sends the image to, we don't need this. We could just change this to image, save a line of code. Okay, so let's give it a run. We go here, we press reload on the main page. We're going to put in JP's information. It comes back and says string. Okay, that's good. Here, let's go to main, and instead of returning string, we're going to open up the page, and we don't need to pass URL anymore. In fact, we don't have to pass anything. On the QR page, in this spot where it normally said URL before, now we're just going to do this image, but we're going to replace it with qr.jpg in big. It's case sensitive. So we're going to say qr.jpg, and that should be it. It should work now. So let's go over here. I'm going to put in JP's information, press submit, done. Let me just double check that for a second. Okay, so I'll go to the camera mode. I click on it on my phone, and there's JP's LinkedIn. Now, what happens if I write Krishna was here and I press submit? It turns that into a QR code too. It's not a URL though. So if I look at it and I click on the button, it's going to open up Google search, and it's going to search for Krishna was here. Try it with your camera. Just point it at the screen. Right? It actually works. I'm getting some very interesting Krishna results. Okay, that makes sense. And of course, we can control the size of this to match the size of that. They are approximately the same size now. You just can't see it because of the border, right? Maybe this would look better a little smaller. Not a problem. We can make the QR code to be 400, and we'll give it a run. Now, when I type in something new, the QR code will be a little bit smaller. Okay, any questions about anything so far? We're almost done. We have a few minutes left. There's just a couple other pieces that we need to do. And that is just a little bit of logging. So we're keeping records of whatever is being processed. And the other part is Google Analytics. So with Google Analytics, I set up my Google Analytics account with a new URL for this. I just have to go into QR code website and put it into Google Analytics like this. and I'll just press measuring page views. And this is going to be called QR generator. And we'll do page views. I'll press create stream. Okay, so we'll give it a second. And it's going to create this measurement ID tag. And we're going to go, to put it into this Google Tag Manager. And it says put this into the head part of your code. So we'll go into our code for both index. Let's put it at the top. Both index okay. Let me copy this and we'll put it here. And that's it. That's literally plugging in Google Analytics. That's the only thing we have to do. I'll just press stop, reload. We'll give this a refresh, and it's already connecting to Google Analytics. So right now, hold on, let me. Okay, so let's go to reports. And this is our real-time report. And this is showing you who's clicking on the site, where they're located, and a whole bunch of other things. How many page views has there been, which pages they go to, how much scrolling did they do, and a whole bunch of other metrics generated in real time. Now, here's the link to the page. Just go on here and give a bunch of clicks. You could use the form as well, right? So like I can go in here, I'll put in JP's LinkedIn, generate a QR code, and the real-time analytics should pop up as it loads. Right, for all users. It is running in real time, so it should just take a minute. We could look at demographics, how many users per minute. We could look at demographic details. We could look at retention, monetization, engagement, acquisition. We could look at reports. So this right now is where you are. You're clicking on somebody's in PEI. Some people are in Toronto. Some people are in Sudbury, right? I don't see anybody else anywhere else, but right? And it gives us real-time dashboard of what's going on with the site. Okay, the last part is, sorry, 1 second. The last part's a little bit tricky. I want to write to JSON, but JSON can be a little bit difficult to do this very simple job. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go into QR. I think this is the easiest place to do it. And we're going to log everything in here, right? So I'm going to say import JSON. And we're going to go to, by the way, does anybody have any questions? Because we have 6 users in the past 30 minutes to our site. Look at that. We're making money. People are visiting the site. It's amazing. Our analytics are going great. Okay, so let's go back here for a second. So we're going to go, we're getting clicks like crazy now. Look at that. You see? It's going great. Now, it does use Google tracking through all the other Google sites. So it knows unique users is not going to show more, but we could look at desktop versus mobile. We could look at how many unique users. There's been 26 QR generation clicks, how many times the form was used, or anything like that. And I'll send you an email with all the code as well. So let's just do a very quick logging file. And that was actually, if you look at the document where we started, that was the last thing that we had to do, right? Logging and setting up analytics. So for the logging part, let's make a file. So I'm just going to grab some code from Geeks for Geeks, and we'll hack it together and make it work. Okay, so we're going to say write JSON, that's our file, new data, file name data.json, right? Then we're going to say with open file name, so with open, and we're going to call this static/log.json in read plus mode. Then we're going to say file data equals json.load file, so read the file. Then join new data with file inside of the details. Okay, file seek 0, convert back to JSON. Okay, so this one we're going to call QR details. That should make more sense. Okay, and then we're going to change it back into JSON, dump it back into the file. Next, inside of here, we have to decide what's going to be appended. So we're going to append two things. So we're going to say new data equals a dictionary, and this dictionary is going to have a key called text, and we'll put image with that. That's going to be the text that came through. And the other part is going to be, do we care about logging the images? No, we're just going to do text. That's it. Okay. Then we'll activate the function. So we're going to say write JSON, and we're going to put in new data. And every time we run this, it should update. Just move this here. I think we should be good. Oh, I put an underscore. Brilliant. All right, let's give it a try. So I'm going to press run. I'm going to press stop. So if you can go on the site and put in JP's thing or something else, we got a crash. Oh, it said no file called static log.json. No problem. We'll go into the static folder and we'll create a file called log.json. Okay, let's try that again. So I'll press start, I'll stop, press run. We'll go over here and we'll go here. I'm going to put in JP's LinkedIn, and something else crashed. And it said, no such file or directory, static log.json. Oh, I put it in the wrong folder, I think. Static log.json. Did I write? All right, let's try that again. Okay. And it tells me error number 2, file not found, static log.json. I think I know the problem. Let's go back here and we'll get rid of the slash before static. That should fix it. Okay, now we're getting a different problem. And it says expected value, we got 0 characters. The file's empty. So we're going to write a list. Okay. Put in JPs. Now it says list indices must be integers or slices, not a string. Okay. This is why it's always tricky working with these guys. So we have text, text goes with sample. Okay, so let's see what's going on. It says the problem is when we say file data QR details dot append new data, list indices must be string or slices, not a string. Okay, so let's go here. File data 0. Dictionary object has no attribute append. So at this point, it's not a sorry. This one is always tricky, updating a dictionary. Let me just double check. So we have write JSON, new data, file name, that's okay. Then we have with open static log.json in read mode as file. Then we have file data as json.load file, so that loads the file data. File data okay, so let's go into here and we'll say no. Okay, so this is going to be QRs goes with a list. That should be good. We could run this with lint as well. Nice. Okay, so now it works. Sorry about the delay. Okay, it usually works the first time, and sometimes you don't know. Okay, so here, give it a try. Go to the site. I'll paste the link in the chat, and we'll take a look if it works or not. So give it a run, fill out the form, and as you did it, now we're getting all those files that are logging right on the site. So we have YouTube, we have Intrepid humming regulators, Friday meeting, etc. So it's going to record anything that you put in there. It will give you text. It will give you, information. I set it up open, otherwise it would condense it. But each dictionary is going to be appending. So what it does, the code here is a little complicated. What it does is it downloads the whole dictionary in JSON. It looks for this key called QRS, right, in Python. It then appends to that list of dictionaries, goes back to the beginning, and then dumps it back with this indent 4. If you got rid of that indent 4, it wouldn't do it as nice as it's doing here, all sorted out. And that's it. That's the whole project. So just to recap from the beginning an hour ago, we started off with this idea that we want to build a QR code from a link. The idea is generating a QR code. We hooked up Google Analytics and we logged the data to JSON. And we did that by building a really simple program. This one's like really tiny. It basically has 2 lines of code, right? We have URL, please input a URL. We take that, we turn it into a thing. We don't even need that. We could just pass a string like this. And then when you run it, it will generate QR.jpg and it makes one of these, right? Then we built the website. So the website part we did first, we looked at the borders, we used tables, we did a little CSS to make it bigger. And of course you could change the color of the button. You could change basically anything that you want to put together. This one is green, but if you want, you can grab it and change it to something else. This is what the website looked like without any of the functionality. Then we plugged it in Flask, and with Flask, we took all of this information and we built two functions. Function number one is the front page of the site. Function number two is where it sends you once that happens. We could have made them the same page, but it's easier to start off with the first page with just the logo, and the second page puts in the QR code. Now, we originally looked at doing that with Jinja, but we don't actually have to because we have files, this QR.jpg that gets overwritten every time. So if I fill out the QR code maker right now and press submit, this picture will change, right? So if I go into here, that image updates. So it's always updating in the back. That's called a flat file. And the flat file is the piece behind the scenes that's constantly being updated. We also generated a favicon. We talked about that. We generated this QR code. And we have analytics. The site has already been used 48 times with 7 unique people. And this is where they are. 85% on desktop, 14% on mobile, and a million other statistics. But you get the idea, right? We can go through here and we can look at like some really, really advanced analytics on where people are coming from. We have 7 users per minute, user acquisition, target acquisition, engagement. We could look at things like how long did each user spend on the site. A lot of this isn't filled out yet because it needs enough information in order to get it to work, right? We haven't got there yet. But eventually I'm going to register a domain name and I'll connect it to the site so you could play around with it. Eventually, now because we're last thing I want to tell you is because we're generating this JSON.log, and it's sitting inside of static, we should be able to access it. So let me open up this and let's just run it again. So I'm going to run this in a new window, and we should be able to go to log.json. Log.json. Oh, static. Let's try that. /static. There we go. So it's actually accessible on the web, right? Like we can go to that file, and that's really useful because if you open up Excel or Power BI, you can connect to a JSON data source and then build a dashboard in Excel or Power BI with this data. So we do have Google Analytics running, right? So this is going to show you real-time data of who's using the site, where in the world they are, how many people have used it over time, and tons of other metrics. But you could build this into a dashboard that's live as well. So as people use the site, when they click on the link, it will automatically update your Excel dashboard, and you could write formulas that say like, if the number of engaged users per minute goes above this, send me an email so I know to increase the server load and things like that, buy more credits for the server, right? Really useful for setting up your data pipeline. All right. Well, I hope this was interesting. Thank you for coming. I will see you later. Have a good weekend. Last week of school.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
See you.
Now if you can